Alright, boys and goyles. Boys and gooys. Gooys and goyles. Here we go. I'm going to barrel through this. I just want to get it started tonight. No super long streams tonight. What we have is a book recommended by David Duke called Red Mafia: How the Russian Mobs Invaded America, written by a Jewish man by the name of Robert I. Friedman, who, according to Duke, died mysteriously from some mysterious blood disease shortly after writing this. Alright, let's get it on record here. So, bring up the text, and we'll get started, get right into it. Yeah, it's good to realize that there are different kinds of Jews in the world. You've got Orthodox Jews, you've got, Russian Jews, Egyptian Jews, you've got Polish Jews, American Jews, you've got Ashkenazi Jews, Sephardic Jews, Orthodox Jews, you have Hasidic Jews. There are all kind of different Jews, and within each different kind of Jew, you have, let's say, Sephardic Jews. You have Sephardic Jews who are religious, Sephardic Jews who are secular, Sephardic Jews who are liberal, Sephardic Jews who are conservative. So when we talk about Jewish people, it's hard to say the Jews. When you say the Jews, you're really betraying your ignorance. You're showing that you think all Jews are all the same. They are not. They are very different, and they're diverse like any other group of people. And there's a lot of disagreement amongst them internally. The difference between them and Gentiles is, despite any beefs or any differences of opinion, when one Jew is attacked, all Jews help out. Zionist Jews, Jews that don't believe in Zionism, and it just goes on and on. So, it's good to keep that in mind. Introduction. The superpower of crime. I had just returned from a vacation in June 1998 when I found out how dangerous it is to investigate the Russian mob. Mike McCall, a top agent on the FBI's Russian Organized Crime Squad in Manhattan, called me with chilling news. "I hate to be the bearer of bad tidings," he said gently, "but the FBI has reliable information that a major Russian organized crime figure has taken out a contract on your life." Belgian journalist Alain Lallemande, an expert on Russian organized crime who has suffered through long, hair-raising attempts on his life, once told me that the Russian mob would leave journalists alone as long as they didn't come between the mobsters and their money. In a series of revelatory articles about the growing threat of the Russian mob in such publications as New York, Details, and Vanity Fair, I had apparently crossed this dangerous line. Stunned, I finally managed to ask McCall what I was supposed to do in response. "We're working on this just as hard as he can," he answered, "but right now, we can't preclude the possibility of something happening to you, okay?" "But how could I protect myself and my wife?" McCall bluntly replied that it wasn't the FBI's responsibility to offer that kind of advice. After some pleading, he at last offered a tip. "If you have the opportunity to lie low, take it." At the time, I was getting ready to fly to Miami to interview a Russian crime lord nicknamed Tarzan, a man who has sold Russian military helicopters to Colombian drug barons and was in the process of brokering a deal to sell them a submarine, complete with a retired Russian captain and a crew of 17 when he was arrested by the DEA. McCall told me to forget about the trip to Miami, which had the second largest concentration of Russian mobsters in the United States. A hitman could easily trace me to my South Beach hotel. For that matter, he said, I should also forget about doing any more interviews in Brighton Beach, Brooklyn. Ground zero for the Russian mob in America. In fact, he advised, I should consider forgetting doing any more reporting at all on the subject. The next day, a magazine that had just published one of my exposés on the Russian criminals generously supplied me with some getaway money and a bulletproof vest. Before I could flee town, however, I noticed a thickly bearded, muscular Russian loitering around my apartment building, whom I was certain I had once seen in the company of a notorious Russian dom nicknamed Fat Felix. I didn't waste any more time. I quickly collected my wife and drove up to a rented hideaway in Vermont. 1 week spent pacing the floors of our retreat left me restless and upset, and I resolved not to be intimidated into silence or to spend another day underground. Despite the risk, I returned to my home. As far as the FBI was concerned, however, I was on my own. They refused to tell me anything further about the death order, feebly explaining that the Bureau couldn't jeopardize its sources and methods. One sympathetic DEA agent suggested that I buy myself a .357 revolver, as he explained, although it flares when it's fired, and there's quite a jolt, it's more reliable than an automatic, which can jam if not constantly cleaned. I later learned, though not through the FBI, that the author of the anonymous death threat against me was Semyon Mogilevich, the Budapest-based leader of the Red Mafia, the most brilliant and savage Russian mob organization in the world. It was after I had written a long expose of his criminal career in the Village Voice that he put out a contract on my life, a threat that was picked up during a telephone intercept by the CIA. According to the New York Times, a European law enforcement official told the Times that the contract was for $100,000. At least one key witness in the murder plot was killed before he could testify against Mogilevich, the Sunday Times of London reported. And I should say that this was written in the year 2000, I believe it was. I first began exploring the shadowy world of Russian organized crime in the late 1980s. I had spent much of my career documenting the primordial struggle between Palestinians and Jews over a tiny blood-stained strip of land on the Mediterranean that both sides passionately love and call home. On occasion, I'd tackle such diverse stories as AIDS, prostitution, and political corruption in India. While working on an Italian mafia story, I was introduced by a Genovese organized crime family source in New York to several of his Russian criminal colleagues, a meeting that opened a door for me into this little-known, nearly impenetrable ethnic underworld. I found them to be devilishly crooked Wunderkinder, who in a few years' time, I suspected, could establish a new world criminal order. Over the following years, I ventured into the Russians' gaudy strip clubs in Miami Beach, paid surprise visits to their well-kept suburban homes in Denver, interviewed hitmen and godfathers in an array of federal lockups, and traveled halfway around the world trying to make sense of their tangled criminal webs, which have ensnared everyone from titans of finance and the heads of government to entire state security services. In the sheltered seaside community of Brighton Beach, I had become a polite but persistent pest. One Brighton Beach mobster tried to bribe me. Another tied me up in a frivolous, though costly, libel suit. Other Russian wise guys tried to scare me off with angry, abusive invective. Several gangsters simply accused me of being biased against Russian emigres. A ridiculous accusation, as all four of my grandparents were Jews who fled Tsarist Russia for America to escape religious persecution. Ironically, the first wave of Russian mobsters used the same excuse to gain entry to America. During the détente days of the early 70s, when Soviet leader Leonid Brezhnev had agreed to allow the limited emigration of Soviet Jews, thousands of hardcore criminals, many of them released from the Soviet gulags by the KGB, took advantage of their nominal Jewish status to swarm into the United States. The majority settled in Brighton Beach, where they quickly resumed their cruel criminal vocation. The Russian mob may act like Cossacks, but I never seriously considered running away an option. Yet then, I received a second, particularly violent death threat. "Friedman, you are a dirty fucking American prostitute and liar. I will fuck you." and make you suck my Russian dick. The obscenity-laced note was placed inside a Hallmark Valentine's Day card that teased, quote, "It was easy finding a Valentine for someone like you," unquote. The author of the threat hadn't bothered to hide his identity. It was signed Vyacheslav Kirillovich Ivankov. The FBI has described Ivankov as the most powerful Russian mobster in the United States. Before coming to the U.S. in 1992, he spent many years in the Gulag for a number of gruesome crimes, including torturing his extortion victims, and he had personally ordered the killing of so many journalists, police, and civilians in Russia that a ruling council of mob bosses banished him to America. Thanks. He arrived with several hundred no-neck thugs led by a former KGB colonel. Using his considerable intelligence and muscle, Ivankov quickly seized control of the Russian Jewish mob, which by then had grown from a neighborhood extortion racket in Brighton Beach to a brutal, innovative, multi-billion-dollar-a-year criminal enterprise. Despite his conviction in 1996 of extorting 2 Russian Wall Street investors and his subsequent sentencing to a prison term in a federal penitentiary until 2005, Ivankov, according to the FBI, had continued to issue commands from his upstate New York cell, ordering the execution of his enemies and underworld rivals. When he mailed me the handwritten death note, the 59-year-old gangster was so brazen that he included his cell block unit and prison ID number. So he just mentions 2005. I think this might have been written, now that I'm thinking about it, in 2009. Well, it says publication date 2000. Oh, I see. He said that was his release date, was in 2005. Okay. So it is 2000. This time, after he got this lovely Valentine's Day card where the guy told him to suck his Russian dick. So this time, I phoned the FBI. McCall rushed to my cramped New York apartment, where he gingerly picked up the caustic message with rubber gloves, placing it into a clear plastic folder. The Bureau later considered making Ivankov's mordant Valentine part of a multi-count federal indictment against the Godfather. "Our idea is to put him away for life," an FBI agent told me, explaining that the longer Ivankov was in jail, the less sway he'd have over criminal comrades. I was asked whether I'd be willing to publicly testify against the Russian. "If it makes you feel any better, I'm on his hit list too," admitted one of the top FBI officials in Washington. In fact, as one of the 2 agents who put Ivankov in prison, so was Mike McCall. But, of course, they both had badges and guns. Still, I agreed to testify, fully aware of the fact that the witnesses who had stood up against Ivankov in the Wall Street extortion case were now living secretly in the federal Witness Protection Program. However perilous the situation into which I was placing myself, I was aware that in Europe and the former Soviet bloc, the dangers faced by journalists are far, far worse. Quote, "Journalists pursuing investigative stories on corruption and organized crime have found themselves at great risk," unquote, stated a 1997 report from the New York-based Committee to Protect Journalists. Quote, "Especially in Russia and Ukraine, where beatings have become routine, these physical assaults have had the expected chilling effect on investigative journalism, frightened some reporters into self-censorship or even quitting the profession, while many have resorted to using pseudonyms," unquote. In all, 13 journalists from the Russian Federation have been killed by the mob since the fall of communism, according to the committee. And if this was in the year 2000, that's about 6 years. 13 dead. In the former Soviet side, the Eastern Bloc nations. In one of the worst incidents of intimidation, Anna Zarkova, a 40-year-old award-winning crime reporter, had sulfuric acid hurled into her face in downtown Sofia in May 1998. From her hospital bed, now blind in one eye, the mother of two appealed to her colleagues not to be cowed into silence. Quote, "If they don't splash acid in your face as a journalist," she said, "tomorrow they will kill you in the street as a citizen. That's how crime escalates in this country," unquote. Well, she had some balls. Russian mobsters in the United States simply don't play by the unwritten rules of the acceptable uses of gangland violence. Rarely has the Italian mafia, for instance, inflicted harm on a member of the American media, prosecutors, or judges, fully aware of the retaliation that would likely result. The Russians, however, have no such prohibition. Murder for them is a blood sport. Quote, "We Italians will kill you," a John Gotti associate once warned a potential snitch over the government wire, continuing the quote, "But the Russians are crazy. They'll kill your whole family," unquote. Some 80 Russian mob-related murders still languish unsolved on the books in Brooklyn alone. "The Russians are ruthless and crazy," a retired New York City cop told me. "It's a bad combination. They'll shoot you just to see if their gun works." It is no small irony that the FBI has become my guardian angel, for if not for its own sluggishness in addressing the problem, the Russian mob in the United States would never have become as powerful as it is today. Though FBI boss Louis Freeh has said that the Russian criminals pose an immense strategic threat to America, the Bureau didn't even set up a Russian organized crime squad in New York until May 1994, long after the Russian mob in America was well entrenched. It should perhaps come as no surprise that the FBI, which likewise failed to go after La Cosa Nostra for 35 years, is now playing a desperate game of catch-up. Okay, from what we know about the FBI, were they just behind? Were they just playing a desperate game of catch-up? Did they not look into La Cosa Nostra for 35 years just because they just didn't get around to it? Come on. The lines are seriously blurred between the FBI and the mafia. The Russian Jewish mafia, the Italian mafia, the mafia, it doesn't matter. They are part of it. And if the higher-ups don't want investigations done, they will not get done. They're fucking gangsters, too. Anybody that doesn't believe me, look up Lucky Luciano, World War II, and Sicily. They let him out of prison just so he could help get his mafia boys, grease the wheels so that the United States could invade Sicily and take out the then enemy Italians. There's a lot of collusion going on. Running the CIA, the FBI, the mafia, running heroin out of Vietnam, and it goes a long way back. So, they were playing a desperate game of catch-up. Okay. Back to the text. Blending financial sophistication with bone-crunching violence, the Russian mob has become the FBI's most formidable criminal adversary, creating an international criminal colossus that has surpassed the Colombian cartels, the Japanese Yakuzas, the Chinese triads, and the Italian mafia in wealth and weaponry. Remember when Khrushchev banged his shoe on a table at the UN and said he would bury the West? A baby-faced Russian gangster once asked me in a Brighton Beach cabaret. He couldn't do it then, but we will do it now. So look at that. They're above the Colombian cartels, the Japanese Yakuzas, the Chinese triads, and the Italian mafia. the Russian Jewish mafia on top of all the mafias. With activities in countries ranging from Malaysia to Great Britain, Russian mobsters now operate in more than 50 nations. They smuggle heroin from Southeast Asia, traffic in weapons all over the globe, and seem to have a special knack for large-scale extortion. The Russian mob has plundered the fabulously rich gold and diamond mines in war-torn Sierra Leone, built dazzling casinos in Costa Rica with John Gotti Jr., and, through its control of more than 80% of Russia's banks, siphoned billions of dollars of Western government loans and aid, thereby exacerbating a global financial crisis that toppled Wall Street's historic bull market in August 1998. Tutored in the mercenary ways of a brutal totalitarian state riddled with corruption, the Russians have developed a business acumen that puts them in a class by themselves. Many of today's foremost Russian mobsters have PhDs in mathematics, engineering, or physics, helping them to acquire an expertise in advanced encryption and computer technology. Hell, a senior Treasury Department official remarked, it took them about a week to figure out how to counterfeit the $100 super note, which was unveiled in 1997 with much fanfare as tamper-proof. More ominously, U.S. intelligence officials worry that Russian gangsters will acquire weapons of mass destruction, such as fissionable material or deadly, easily concealed pathogens such as the smallpox virus, all too readily available from poorly guarded military bases or scientific labs, and sell these deadly wares to any number of terrorist groups or renegade states. In North America alone, there are now 30 Russian crime syndicates operating in at least 17 U.S. cities, most notably New York, Miami, San Francisco, L.A., and Denver. The Russians have already pulled off the largest jewelry heist and insurance and Medicare frauds in American history, with a net haul exceeding $1 billion. Folks, that's 1,000 million. They have invaded North America's financial markets, orchestrating complete stock scams, allegedly laundering billions of dollars through the Bank of New York, Jewish mafia banks, and coolly infiltrating the business and real estate worlds. The Russian mob has even penetrated the National Hockey League, the NHL, folks, where many players have either been its victims or become mafia facilitators, helping the mob sink its roots further into American soil. There is even fear that NHL games may be fixed. The Russians didn't come here to enjoy the American dream, New York State tax agent Roger Berger says glumly. They came here to steal it. Look at that. The lines are blurred between FBI, CIA, mafia, banking, money laundering, drug dealing, weapons sales, human trafficking. These are one and the same. And it makes you wonder why drugs are still illegal. Because if you wanted to put these gangsters out of business in that one aspect, all you have to do is make the drugs legal with certain restrictions. But now, they stay illegal, folks. Why? Puts the profit up, doesn't it? Russian mobsters in the United States aren't just Italian wise guy wannabes. Forget about it. Merging with the even more powerful mafia groups that have flourished in post-perestroika Russia, they have something La Cosa Nostra can only dream about. Their own country. Just as Meyer Lansky ran Cuba for a short time until Castro seized power in 1959, the Russian mob virtually controls their nuclear-tipped former superpower, which provides them with vast financial assets and a truly global reach. Russian President Boris Yeltsin wasn't exaggerating when he described Russia as the biggest mafia state in the world and the superpower of crime. In 1993, a high-ranking Russian immigration official in Moscow told U.S. investigators there were 5 million dangerous criminals in the former USSR who would be allowed to immigrate to the West. It's nearly impossible for the State Department to weed out these undesirables because the former states of the Eastern Bloc seldom make available the would-be emigre's criminal record. It's wonderful that the Iron Curtain is gone, but it was a shield for the West, Boris Yurov, the former chief investigator of major crimes for the Russian Attorney General, has declared. Now we've opened the gates, and this is very dangerous for the world. America is getting Russian criminals. Nobody will have the resources to stop them. You people in the West don't know our mafia yet. You will, you will. For nearly a year, the FBI promised to prosecute Ivankov for his death threat, or at least punish him by taking away some of his basic privileges. Oh yeah, we're really trying hard to prosecute him. When they refused to act, What's that tell you? I went to the Committee to Protect Journalists, which contacted the New York Times. On March 5th, 1999, Pulitzer Prize-winning reporter Blaine Harden wrote a front-page Metro section story about the death threats. I was a good soldier for a long time, I told Harden, but then I felt like a billy goat on a stake. I've been exposed too long, and the people making these threats have gone unpunished too long. Within days after Harden called the FBI for comment, Ivankov was transferred in the middle of the night from his comfy cell at Raybrook Correctional Institution, a medium security federal prison near Lake Placid, New York, to the maximum security prison at Lewisburg, Pennsylvania. The Times reported that Lewisburg would impose considerably higher security restrictions on him because of the threat. I want him to know I am behind this punishment, I told the Times, and I want him to know that he cannot threaten the American press the same way the Mafia does in Russia. That's the end of the intro. I don't know that it's too good of an idea to be pounding your chest and flaunting it and putting it in the guy's face. I want him to know, fuck that. I don't want him to know shit. The less he knows about me, the better. Fucking stupid. Maybe that's why he ended up dead. I don't know. Don't know. Alright, Chapter 1. The Hitman. On a spring day when warm sunshine flooded the narrow, potholed streets, I took a taxi to Metropolitan Correctional Center, an imposing collection of tomb-like cinder block towers in lower Manhattan, to interview Manya Elson, one of the most dangerous Russian mobsters the feds ever netted. I passed through several layers of security before I was shepherded by an armed guard up an elevator and deposited in a small antiseptic cubicle with booming acoustics where lawyers meet their clients. I had a tape recorder and 4 hours of Memorex. The old days. At least half a dozen armed guards stood outside the door, which was closed but had an observation window. Guys, I forgot. Let me check the chat, see who we got. We got 11 in here. It's kind of quiet, but that's okay. Any comments? Guy says the protocols of Zion are the blueprint, or is the blueprint. I haven't read them all, but reading the first 2 or 3 put a chill down my spine, and I had an epiphany that they're right. Everything they say in there is right. Like it or not, they know what they're talking about. And the main thing was that there's no such thing as fairness and equality and all that shit, and we're all the same, and egalitarianism, the best for everyone, and fuck that. The truth in this world is that there is no such thing as fairness in Mother Nature. That's what they say in their first couple protocols. There is no such thing as right or wrong. There's only fucking survival, and might makes right. Now, I've been doing this a long time. I'm 46 years old. I've been studying into this shit for a long time. And I started out naive and idealistic just like everyone else. Well, why can't the world work like this? And we should all be fair. And if we could only, I was an idiot. I didn't know how the world really works. The world really works with force, power, fucking death and destruction, cheating and stealing and manipulation. That's the way the fucking world works. If you don't like it, go find another fucking planet to live on, because that's how this one works. And to talk about good or evil, there is no such thing as good or evil. There's only what suits you at the moment. That's it. I'll give you an example. Let's say you're watching a nature program on gazelles, and you watch the mother gazelle gives birth to the little baby gazelle, and the thing follows her around, and you're like, oh, you're all invested into this thing. It's the main subject of your show, so you're like, wow, I hope it lives, I hope it grows up, and it can have babies too, and everything can be all right. And then you're watching the baby, hopping through and, playing, and oh, that's so cute, and it's eating grass and all, and about a week goes by, the thing hasn't eaten, and it's struggling to survive. And then finally, they found a patch of grass where they can go and eat, but it's infested with lions and other kind of predators there. And so the baby's eating, and then out from the bushes, wham, comes a lion. A lioness tears it up, rips it up, and they eat it alive right there. The thing's screaming, and you're all horrified, and you're like, that fucking evil lion, and you want to kill the lion. Your sensibilities, you're invested into this gazelle. You've been watching this fucking documentary for 45 minutes now. You're like, damn it, they killed the gazelle. But let's say you were watching a documentary on lions, right? And you watch as the lion cubs grow up, and they're fucking all cute, and they're playing and all. Now you're invested into the lions, right? The mother lion goes for about a week without food. They can't find any fucking food. And then all of a sudden, she spots a gazelle, a mother gazelle, and the baby. And finally, an opportunity to feed her babies. Boom, she rushes out, kills the gazelle, and they eat it alive. Same thing, same exact thing. Except now you're like, oh, thank God the baby's got to eat. I feel terrible for the gazelle, but at least the baby's got to eat. Now, where's the good and evil? You could see the same act as good or evil, depending on what side of the fence you're looking at. There's no such thing as good and evil. There is no such thing as fairness in nature. There is no such thing. Might makes right. I encourage you to read The Protocols of Zion and to read The Prince by Machiavelli. If you want to learn how this fucking world works, that's how it works. I'm sorry. We live in a nice, comfy fucking country where we have the highest standard of living in the world, in the history of the planet Earth, the most abundance. We've got everything we want, so we like to tell ourselves that we're all moral and that we're all this and that, and we have these sensibilities of right and wrong. But let the water cut off for a week. Let the food run out and the shelves run empty, and you're desperate to feed your family, and your neighbor's got a stockpile of food and no weapon, and you've got a weapon, and your fucking kids are starving. You'll go over there and you'll kill that motherfucker if you have to. This was a neighbor you grew up with and loved and would have done anything for in your whole life, but now your kids are fucking hungry. What are you gonna do? Let your kids starve? No. There is no right or wrong. There is only survival in this world, and I hate to admit it, but it's the truth. So, the people who wrote the Protocols of Zion realized that. And they are willing to use any fucking method. Doesn't matter. You can call them immoral, you can call them this. They're on top, ain't they? And we're not. Why? Because we won't stoop to their fucking level. We need to read the protocols as our blueprint, not theirs, and flip the script on them. We need to be able to read something like Saul Alinsky's Rules for Radicals, that which tells the lefties, the radical lefties, to use all these tricks of the trade. And we need to be able to employ them ourselves. And until we're willing to stoop to that level, we're going to continue to get eviscerated. So enjoy it. Enjoy it, America, because you're fucking beat. Yes, I am telling you to be immoral. As a group, if you want to be on top. If it wasn't them on top, it would be another group. If it wasn't America on top in the world, it'd be some other country dominating and bombing and shit. I'm glad it's our country. I don't want our country to be out bombing other countries and destroying shit. But that means we're on top, so we got a nice comfy life here. If it was the script flipped, we'd be on the bottom and we'd be wishing we were the country that is fucking shit up. So, I know it gives me mixed feelings, but that's the way the world works. I didn't make the rules. This is the planet I was born on. Alright, let's go read chapter 1. So, I'm going to read the first paragraph again, or give you a synopsis. He goes and he's going to visit this guy, Manya Elson. And he brought with him some Memorex. Is it live or is it Memorex? He's got a tape recorder. This is old as hell. At least a half a dozen armed guards stood outside the door. It's got an echo in there. It's got great acoustics. And you're in a prison now with that sound. And you can almost hear the people screaming and yelling and, you know, the sounds of a prison with doors slamming and shit. So put yourself into that environment, that milieu. Elson, an edgy man with a dark mien. I don't know what an M-I-E-N is. Let me see if we can take a look. I don't know what that word means, so we're going to look real quick. Where is my dictionary? Oh, it's not open. M-I-E-N. Any guesses, guys, while I'm opening this dictionary? I don't know what it says. He's got a... Let's see here. Sorry, bear with me. There we go. Okay. A mean. Let's read the sentence again. Maybe I get a guess. With a dark mien. An edgy man with a dark mien. M-I-E-N. A complexion? Or an aura about him? Let us see, shall we? Hold on. Give me a second. I didn't get my dictionary ready. Alright. A person's look or manner, especially one of a particular kind, indicating their character or mood. So he's saying he's a dark, scary-looking motherfucker. Elson, let me go back to where you can see your ever-faithful host. Elson, an edgy man with a dark mien. I guess I'm pronouncing that correctly. Was brought into the room, his hands and feet chained. He's considered a maximum security risk, and for good reason. A natural-born extortionist and killing machine, Elson is perhaps the most prolific hitman in Russian mob history, making Sammy the Bull Gravano, with 19 acknowledged hits, a mere piker. Piker? I gotta do you again. Oh, by the way, before I look that up, look at his shirt. You know, you ever see the guy Blunt Man in the chat? He's an artist, and he made this. Check this out. Because I was against pretty much both candidates. Dun, 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 dun. These nuts. Not these nuts. Pretty cool. I don't know if you guys remember, but in 2016 there was a guy who registered to run for president under the name D's Nuts, and I thought that was fucking hilarious. Let me check the chat, see if anybody got anything to say about that. Time for our death squads to unite, Elliot says. We must take what food, water, and weapons of the world and secure the future for the goooooy. Yeah, I mean, we're a long way for that, but a long way from that. We're not even organized. Maybe that should be the goal, but when you're talking armies, it's tough. Hey, let me ask you guys, how come just about everybody, I've gone back through my chats and just looked, almost everybody's got a new account or a ghost account. There's like nobody's making content. What's up with that? It's like a bunch of ghosts. I don't understand it. There might be some liked videos or some, couple playlists set up. A few people have had their accounts for a long time, like Mass One has been around for at least 5 years. My account's 10 years old. I don't see anybody with an account that's more than a month old. I guess dealing with this, people made second and third accounts, so if it gets taken out, that's the only thing. I don't know. It gives people who are conspiracy theorists, it gives them the meat and the motivation for them to say, see, it's all bots and it's all this and it's all that. I don't fucking know. All I know is I'm going to keep on making content. That's all I know. I don't give a fuck. You could call me GDL, you could not call me GDL. I could be, I don't care. I'm going to keep on making content. People keep trying to divide shit by saying, oh, Handsome Truth's a shill, this one's working for that one, this one's got a fucking, he's scamming and he's setting up credit card shit to boost people. I don't give a fuck if everyone in the GDL was either a bot or an agent. I'm still going to make content. I'm not going to let it stop me. Not even a little bit. That's what it's supposed to do. All this one is a bot, this one's a shill, this one is that, blah, blah, blah. It gets you to not trust anyone, and it gets you to start wasting your time by researching into people and finding out who they are and trying to dox people and then making videos about it. It's a waste of my energy and time. I'm going to put my energy and time into creating content. That's what I do. Alright. Elson, an edgy man with a dark mien, was brought into the room, his hands and feet chained. He's considered maximum security risk for good reason. He's killed more motherfuckers than Sammy the Bull Gravano, who's a mere piker. That's right, we're going to look up piker. What the fuck is a piker? I got a pretty decent vocabulary, too. A gambler who only makes small bets. Okay, he's a small timer. That's what a piker is. Never heard of that. Makes Sammy the Bull. That guy's killed a lot of motherfuckers then. Elson boasts 100 confirmed kills, a figure the authorities don't dispute. Wow. He's killed 100 motherfuckers. With his dour-faced wife, Marina. Dour means like sourpuss. Let's see. Relentlessly severe, stern, or gloomy in manner or appearance. So she came in with her fucking sour-ass puss face. Elson boasts 100 confirmed kills, a figure the authorities don't dispute. with his dour-faced wife Marina, Elson would allegedly go out on murderous rampages, rumbling around Brooklyn in the back of a van. After flinging open its doors, they would gleefully execute their shakedown victims, a la Bonnie and Clyde. It was a sex thing, claims a Genovese good fella who worked closely with Elson. They got off on the withering bodies. Oh, man. Just goes to show you, when you're out there in public, you don't know who is who. You better treat everybody with respect out there, because you don't know who you're fucking with. Killers, judges, cops, gangsters, just all the road rage and shit. You don't know who you're fucking giving the middle finger to, at all, cutting people off because you're mad. I'm mad. Use the stoicism. Control your anger, because anger will get you fucked up. Anger, even if it doesn't get you killed, will eat you up from the inside and destroy a man. No one can make you angry but you. You're driving in a car, someone cuts you off or goes too slow, or they're pumping their brakes. Not my problem. I can't control what other people can do. All I can control is the way I react to it. There are crazy motherfuckers out there. This is a man and a wife who got off on dead bodies. I am not giving them the middle fucking finger. You know what I'm saying? I'm from New Jersey. This is close to me. That's New York. I don't know who the fuck is who out there. You better just keep a low profile is the best way. A nice friendly wave and a thank you. Moving on. Minding my business. That's the best way. So the Genovese Goodfella says it was a sex thing that they got off on the withering bodies. Elson emigrated. That means not immigrated is to come to a nation. Emigrate is to leave a nation. Elson emigrated from the Soviet Union in 1978, claiming Jewish refugee status, and settled in Brighton Beach, Brooklyn. His mission? To become the most legendary gangster of all time. Nobody remembers the first man who walked on the moon, Elson explains. Everybody remembers Al Capone. Elson wore a drab, brown, prison uniform. His close-cropped hair, formerly thick and black, had thinned and turned salt and pepper like his mustache. His once handsomely roguish face was puffy and pale. Cyrillic letters were tattooed onto each finger, identifying him as a made man in the Russian mob. Cyrillic is the Russian language. When the last prison guard left the room, Elson, his hands unshackled, scooped me up in a bone-jarring Russian bear hug, kissing me on both cheeks. He was enormously strong. Elson granted me an interview, in part because my maternal grandfather was from Kishinev, Elson's hometown. "Oh, we have the same blood," he said, "but it went in a different direction. I come from a different culture. I am a criminal, and for you this is bad. You were raised to believe in the law. What is good for you is not good for me. I am proud of what I am." That's what the gangster said. Elson suddenly started pulling off his shirt and pants. Look here," he shouted excitedly, showing off his battle trophies, pointing to a crater from a dum-dum bullet near his heart. What? Hold on. Near his heart, changing pages, bear with me. He boasted, "It's still inside. And look at this. I was shot all over. It wasn't a joke. The pain in my arm from a shooting goes through me like electricity on wet and humid days. It really hurt." I'm morphing into Arnold Schwarzenegger. Happens every time. Elson was most proud of a large tattoo that covered his right shoulder. It depicted an anguished-looking skeleton immersed in a vat of acid, desperately reaching up to grasp two angels hovering above. "In this world, a young man seeks a name," said Elson. laying out his bleak criminal philosophy. When he has found a name, he seeks money. When he has found money, he seeks power. But when he has power, he doesn't wish to lose it. Elson has spent his career clawing over the corpses of his enemies, trying to reach to the top rung of Russian organized crime, a metaphorical place he calls the warm spot. MCC hadn't dampened, that's the place, the correction facility. MCC hadn't dampened Elson's egomania. He wanted to know what every wise guy I interviewed had to say about him. "You spoke to somebody about me?" Elson asked, playing with an empty plastic ashtray. "Of course." "Don't say to whom, but what did they say? Tell me description. Don't tell me who, because I'll lose my patience." "They say you're a hitman, professional, one of the best," I replied. "Brave, tough, also cruel, unforgiving." "Oh, that's what unforgiving," Elson added. "But fair or not, I never touched an innocent person. Or they said that I did. People say I don't have feelings, I don't give a fuck. It's not true. It's not true. First of all, if you don't have feelings, you'd have to be a Hitler, or you'd have to be a Stalin. But when you lead the criminal life, where somebody wants to kill you, that somebody wants to take your warm spot. You cannot let them. I did not kill people for fun. That's not true." Elson suddenly became sullen, irritable. His mouth twisted into a tight sneer. "This place is like a mental institution," he moaned with disgust. Prison was eating into his soul, although he denied that he was having a hard time dealing with it. "I've been fighting since I was 11 years old. I'm a fighter, not a punk." Elson was born to a Jewish family 2 years before Stalin's death, on May 23, 1951. Kishinev, the 5 centuries-old city on the banks of the river Dniester, was a town without pity for Jews. A pogrom on April 3, 1903, incited by the Tsar's Minister of the Interior, Vyacheslav von Plehve, killed more than 50 Jewish residents. Scores of Jewish women were raped by pillaging Cossack horsemen. The pogrom was memorialized in an epic poem by Bialik, in which he lamented the plight of the diaspora Jew as, quote, "the senseless living and the senseless dying," unquote, in a world that would always remain hostile to them. Bialik underscored the Jewish people's deep yearnings for an independent homeland or a ticket to safety in the West. Time and time again through history, we always hear about these pogroms in countries. We hear about the Jews getting expelled. We hear all about this death and destruction wrought upon Jews. But we never hear anything about what precipitated it. I have the inkling that there has to be more to the story than, well, Jews are just hated and everybody goes in from time to time just to kill and rape them. I find it hard to believe that in country after country after country after country, all throughout history, century after century after century, from the ancient Romans who went and destroyed the temple, all the way up to modern-day Russia in 1903, which killed them in pogroms, that there was no reason for it. I have a hard time believing that, and that's why I'm doing what I do. I want to put out both sides of the story. Yes, Jews have had a hard fucking time. Yes, they have been killed and slaughtered and thrown out of countries, but there has to be a reason. No other group of people goes through this. Only this one. Why this one? Everybody just wants to hate them? I don't buy it. I don't buy it. And all the victim in the world and all the gruesome descriptions of death and destruction cannot make me think otherwise. There has to be a reason. And I think you guys know what some of the things are. I think a people can only take so much before they react. That's what I think. From that time he was a boy, from the time that he was a boy, Elson instinctively recognized that there was only one way out of the Jewish ghetto: to excel at crime. He grew up in a rough neighborhood, which grew even rougher when, the year before he died, Stalin released thousands of inmates from the Gulag into the district. These hooligans became Elson's heroes. "We had guys who were like the kings of the neighborhood, tough guys. They were fighters. They weren't afraid of the police. And in every conversation they spoke about in jail. How to survive the Gulag, how to be independent of the law Russia imposed on you. When you grow up and you hear only bad things about the government and the words were coming from cruel people who had passed through the harshest system in the world, the Gulag." That's true. "The Stalin regime and World War II, this environment, of course, has some influence on you, because every kid, as I understand it, in my country, in any country, wants to be tough, wants to be famous, wants to be strong somehow." The gulags are no joke. I've read some Solzhenitsyn, Gulag Archipelago. Whew, no joke. No joke. The songs Elson relished as a youth were not communist odes to the motherland, but rather criminal folk songs with lyrics like, "This street gave me the nickname Thief and gradually put me behind bars." Given the gross inequities of communism, where corruption wasn't just widespread, but the business of the state, it was almost inevitable that the Soviet Union would be plagued by an almost institutionalized culture of thievery. As Pulitzer Prize winner David Remnick, a former Washington Post correspondent in Moscow, has portrayed the situation, quote, "It was as if the entire Soviet Union were ruled by a gigantic mob family known as the CPSU, the Communist Party of the Soviet Union," unquote. Beneath the thin veneer of official communism lay a vast underground economy of off-the-hook factories, food co-ops, and construction companies that were the basis of the burgeoning black market in everything from medicines to foodstuffs. Store and restaurant managers, directors of state enterprises, officials of local, regional, and even national party institutions, and operators of collective and state farms all trafficked in illegal business. Corruption was so pervasive in the Black Sea port of Odessa, historically a major seat of organized crime in Russia, that the first secretary of the city's party committee was sentenced to death in the early 1970s for black marketeering. That's the black market. Work in the black market. By the end of the Brezhnev period, the underground sector of the economy accounted for as much as 50% of the personal income of Soviet workers. But it was the apparatchiks and black marketeers who profited the most, living like feudal lords in ornate hilltop palaces and summer villas, relaxing in private sanatoriums, shopping in special stores filled with Japanese consumer goods, and traveling abroad, the most coveted privilege in the restrictive Soviet Union. Yes, the Soviet Union would not let their people out of the Soviet Union until 1970. We were just reading about this in one of the last chapters of The Ugly Truth about the ADL. How the ADL worked a deal with the United States government. If you guys were paying attention, I'm testing you now. Were you paying attention? Or were you in the chat? Totally ignoring what I'm doing. Probably a lot of that going on. But hey, it's your world. The ADL brokered a deal with the government of the United States and the government of Russia to exchange food from the United States to go to Russia in exchange for, remember, the ADL are Zionists. They want Russians to go to Israel. They made a deal where the food goes to Russia, and Russia would agree to let some of their people to go out of the Soviet Union, specifically only Jews, but the Jews had to go to Israel. Well, there were other United States organizations, Jewish organizations, who weren't Zionist, and they got Russians to go to the United States. So you see, all Jews aren't Zionists. All Jews don't see the same thing. They don't work together. The Zionist organizations, I think it says later, the Zionist ADL type organizations were pissed off at these other United States Jewish organizations for getting them to go to America because the ADL and their Zionist buddies wanted to build up Israel. So there's a lot going on. It's complicated. When we say, oh, the Jews did this and the Jews do that, you need to know what Jews and what were their motives and what was their thinking and which section of Jews, because they all do different things. We on the outside, the goyim, just see, oh, the Jews did this and the Jews did that. I hope to enlighten people in regard to the different types of Jews and how to distinguish, so you don't look like a dummy and just a plain anti-Semite saying, well, the Jews want X and the Jews want Y. Well, which Jews? So that's something we need to do to sharpen our message. We just look like idiots when we say the Jews, the Jews, the Jews. It's obvious to anybody that knows about Jews or the Jews themselves, all Jews, that you don't know shit. So I'm learning too. I'm guilty too. I'm not saying it's just you guys. I'm saying me too. We got to learn. So by the end, I'll read that again, that last one. By the end of the Brezhnev period, the underground sector of the economy... No, not that. This sentence. But it was the apparatchiks. You know what? I want to look that word up. Let's look the apparatchiks up. I think it's somebody that works for the government. Apparatchik. A member of the Communist Party apparat, an official in a large political organization. So, if you were a Communist Party member, you got special privileges. You got to travel abroad and all that stuff. So, I'll read that again in light of that new word you just got and put into your quiver. Another arrow for you to use in the war of words in which we find ourselves engaged. Back to the text. But it was the apparatchiks and black marketeers who profited the most, living like feudal lords in ornate hilltop palaces and summer villas, relaxing in private sanatoriums, shopping in special stores filled with Japanese consumer goods, and traveling abroad, the most coveted privilege in the restrictive Soviet Union. But the black marketeers weren't only ambitious Russians with an entrepreneurial bent. They often included nationally renowned members of the intelligentsia, sports cars, chess champions, and the cream of the art and entertainment worlds. Now, intelligentsia, isn't that the people who are engaged in intelligent endeavors such as literature and the arts, and the people who communicate with the... Because I know that communists, when they take over a place, they kill the intelligentsia first. And those are people who write books, the authors, literary people. Let's take a look, see if my guess is right, because I've never looked it up. Intelligentsia. There you go, got the spelling right. Intellectuals, or highly educated people, as a group, especially when regarded as possessing culture and political influence. So the intellectuals are the people who could likely get the people who aren't as smart to fight communism, because they're smart, they know how to organize. And so what you see time and time again with communism is they kill the intelligentsia first. That way what's left is the common rabble, the common proletariat, the proles, the what's another word for it? just the regular old folks. The people who work with their hands, blue-collar people like ourselves. They go and kill the intelligentsia first, and then we've got nobody to speak for us, and then you're fucked. Research the communist revolution. It wasn't a revolution, it was an outside attack, but whatever. So, and the people who privilege the most, the black marketeers who weren't only ambitious Russians with an entrepreneurial bent, they often included nationally renowned members of the intelligentsia, but the right intelligentsia, the communist intelligentsia. And once you kill the old guard of the intelligentsia, then you replace them with your own intelligentsia, who are going to propound your bullshit propaganda. Not all propaganda is bullshit, mind you. The cream of the entertainment and art worlds, sports stars, chess champions, blah, blah, blah. These individuals would journey overseas under the patronage of a friendly politician, bringing back choice wares like Citroen cars, motorboats, and designer fashions for resale. Many became multi-millionaires. Unsurprisingly, the state, while officially denying the existence of crime, tolerated the criminal underworld, the thugs and extortionists who played a prime role in feeding the country's repressed appetite for consumer goods. So, while the state would outlaw consumer goods from abroad, I remember back in the 80s, it was a big deal when the United States were able to get jeans, blue jeans. The Russians were listening to rock and roll in blue jeans, and everybody's like, yeah, this is cool. They had been starved from outside goods. The government told you what you can and can't have. They told you where you can go or can't go. It was complete and total control, which is what they're trying to do here, and it's the same crowd, it's their descendants that are trying to do that here in the United States. And little by little, they'll get it, because we'll give it to them, just like we always do. We lay over, we turn over, we roll over, and we lay and prostrate ourselves to the almighty communists who tell us that words are bad and hate crimes and all this shit, and we let them. And we're not in the fucking streets destroying shit because we think we can go to the fucking ballot box and change something. It's bullshit. And the only thing that matters is might in this world. Remember that. It is the only fucking thing. One of these days, when it gets bad enough, we're going to have to resort to it. I don't recommend it, but when protesting becomes impossible, violent revolution becomes inevitable. So here's the state that tells everybody they can't have this and that, but the people working the black market in Russia would bring these things in, and the privileged class, the intelligentsia, the sports stars, and all that shit would have access to this shit. But the common working class people didn't get shit. They were there just to fucking grow the food and truck it around and fucking take care, do all the shit that needs to be done, fixing the infrastructure, doing all that shit that the higher-ups don't want to do. The higher-ups just want to sit back and sip their fucking champagne and just reap the benefits of everything we, the working class, do. It's the same thing here. It's the same fucking thing. We never learn. We never learn. History repeats and repeats and repeats and repeats because everybody's too consumed with fucking idle entertainment rather than learning about what the fucking real deal is. And that's why it repeats. Ignorance! It's a damn shame. So, they said officially the state, unsurprisingly, the state, while officially denying the existence of crime, tolerated criminal underworld thugs, extortionists, who played a prime role in feeding the country's repressed appetite for consumer goods. Organized crime in the Soviet Union bears the stamp of the Soviet political system, wrote Konstantin Simis, a lawyer who had worked in the Soviet Ministry of Justice, in his expose, USSR, the Corrupt Society. Quote, "It was the characteristic of the system that the ruling district elite acted in the name of the party as racketeers and extortionists, and that the criminal underworld, per se, paid through the nose to the district apparat, that's the Communist Party, for stolen goods and services, unquote. So you had a system where they officially said, well, we don't have any crime, we're good. Meanwhile, they're facilitating it and putting the fucking thumb down on the criminal world, who had to pay through the nose for these stolen goods and all, so that these higher-ups could have it. Because if the criminal world didn't do what the government officials told them, they'd just lock them the fuck up. What a gig. Left out of this lucrative equation were most average Russians. But I tell you, although the majority also learned to deal in illegal black market contraband to one degree or another, there was simply no other way to survive. The greedy nomenclatura, the elite membership of the Soviet government system. Nomenclature means the name, I think. And criminal demimonde hoarded the greater share of the nation's already scarce resources for themselves. I'm sorry to do it to you, but I gotta do it. Nomenclatura. Nomenclature in English is naming something. Let's see. Nomenclature, the devising or choosing of names for things, especially in a science or other discipline. The nomenclature. Now let's see if they've got the Russian version. Nomenclatura. There we go. Nomenclatura. A list of influential posts in government and industry to be filled by Communist Party appointees. So they're posts in the government. The nomenclatura. Nomenclatura. And what is demimonde? We gotta know. I gotta know. Demimonde. I think we looked this up. People on the fringes of respectable society. Someone who is doubtful morality and standing. So, pretty much a dirtbag. It's a beautiful French name for, someone who's on the fringes of society. We're learning. Let me check the chat real quick. I haven't looked at the chat that whole time. We got a lot of Jesus talk going on. Jesus' single greatest act was turning over the tables of the moneylenders and whipping them and driving them out of their temple. That was some bad shit. That was the only time Jesus got violent in the whole Bible, in the whole New Testament. And for that, I like me some Jesus. Whether he existed or not, I like the story. You're welcome, bad goooooy. What you doing there, bad goooooy? Let's see. Shekel stuffed hollow crust. That's some serious verbiage. Museum search. I want to keep it classy. Yeah, let's keep it classy. I don't want any talk about. That's lowbrow. Let's keep it up a little. You know what I mean? Hollow crust pizza. Yeah, let's chill on that, Mangala. Alright? I don't like banning people, but I will if I have to. Just keep it chill. Keep it chill, man. Let's not give people ammunition that they can say, well, there's fucking GDL, they're just a bunch of anti-Semites. Let's keep it at a level, an intellectual level. You know what I mean? Strictly the facts. Just the facts, man. Just the facts. Let's keep it like that, alright? Alright. But otherwise, what people say about us then is true. Then they're right. They're right. We are a bunch of fucking idiots and all. who don't know the difference between different types of Jews and who sit there and talk about soap and lampshades and all. I mean, it's juvenile. Maybe it's because I'm older. I probably would have been doing the same thing 20 years ago. But let's try to keep it to a higher level. Listen to your elder Shmuel. Alright, let's get back up on it. There we go. Where am I? Okay. So we just learned the crazy words nomenclatura, which is the government positions, and the demimande, the people on the fringes of society. And they were talking about the black market. They were like, there was simply no other way to survive. The greedy nomenclatura, the people in government positions, the elite membership of the Soviet governing system, and the criminal demimande, the people on the fringes of society, hoarded the greater share of the nation's already scarce resources for themselves. Victims of the raw fear that was a legacy of the terrors of the Stalin regime, as well as of communism's own ongoing murderous abuses, most of the proletariat literally despised the state. Quote, everyone in my neighborhood was bitter toward Lenin, Stalin, and later Khrushchev, unquote, Elson remembered. Oh, I forgot to do my Russian voice. Sounds more and more like fucking Arnold. Arnold! Yeah! Like, who's the guy? Love his channel. Does some fucking funny shit. He's got the guy, it's the black version of Arnold Schwarzenegger. Dino. With something gooey. Funny as fuck, dude. This is Arnold Schwarzenegger. Kills me with that shit. In towns like Kishinev, this tremendous cynicism and distrust of authority went beyond simply an acceptance of criminality. Most people not only did business with mobsters on a daily basis, but held powerful criminals, as opposed to the loathed apparatchiks, in the highest regard. So most people looked at the apparatchiks, the people in these nomenclatura, these government positions, they looked at them with like scumbags, but they looked at the mobsters as, hey, these are one of us, they looked at them in the highest regard. It's the same thing here. Everybody looks at Al Capone and all these guys with a sort of reverence, which I never understood. These are a bunch of criminal fucks who will fucking, if you had a shop, they would lean on you to pay them every month. They're over there murdering people. They're fucking robbing and stealing the regular people of this fucking country. And we look at him like, yeah, he's the fucking man, dude. Fucking, how stupid are we? And then black people, idolize this gangsta culture. It's the lowest fucking forms of criminals on the earth. They are dog shit. Well, maybe the people who go to war, make our people go to war and kill other people in other countries, they're probably worse. But these guys, they're nothing to be idolized, yet the common people always idolize them. I don't get it. These criminals often enjoyed a reputation among the populace for their Robin Hood-like honesty. They even meted out justice in local tribunals called people's courts, where common folk, eschewing state authorities, that means doing away with, eschew, flocked to solve their personal disputes. In a way, I do like vigilantism, as long as it doesn't get out of control. The people's courts, which existed in towns and communities throughout the country, were largely administered by a special breed of colorful lawbreaker called vor v zakonie, or thieves-in-law, a fraternal order of elite criminals that dates back to the time of the czars. And in a way, when your government, this is something we need to take fucking heed of. I said earlier, might makes right. I said earlier, there is no right and wrong and blah, 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 and that we need to be able to stoop to the level that we need to get what we want, right? Well, when our government doesn't give us justice, what should we do? What should we do? The people's courts in Russia, they knew what to do. The government wouldn't give them their fucking justice, so they got together with their local gangsters and thugs, and they meted out justice themselves. Just like we used to do in this country, like the South did to that guy Leo Max Frank, the guy that murdered that little girl, Mary Fagan. He got locked up. I'm going to read that book too. He got locked up. He got sentenced to life in prison. This is back in 1913. He sat in prison for 2 years. Then some governor got bribed by a bunch of powerful Jewish people to commute his sentence to just life in prison and not death. These days we'd be satisfied with that. But those days, those white boys down in Georgia, they went in the prison, 9 cars deep, came in with their shotguns, unmasked. They wanted people to know who did it. It was all the people who ran Atlanta, Georgia. And they grabbed that motherfucker up and they took him and they lynched him themselves. Hung that motherfucker by the neck until dead. That makes me so fucking proud. This guy, he was a Jew. He happened to be a Jew. But the fact that they got this scumbag who raped and murdered a little 13-year-old girl, and they gave him justice. Because I know a lot of you people are Christian. Now listen to me. Hear me now. A lot of you people are Christian and you believe that everything's going to be made okay in the afterlife. Well, what if you're wrong? The only justice we get in this world is the justice we make here and now. And if you think about it, Christianity is a slave religion. It teaches you to turn the other cheek. When somebody slaps you, you turn the other cheek. And we don't do that type of stuff. And God will take care of everything in the end. There's a special place full of fire and brimstone where everybody's going to burn. So don't worry, everybody's going to get theirs in the end. Bullshit. In this world, the good die young, and the old and the fucking criminals live to be old and live fucking nice and comfy lives. It happens all the time. The fucking people who fight for right and justice get killed, get murdered, get attacked, get abused, and the people who are the criminals and the thugs live a long life. And you're going to tell me to turn the other cheek and to wait for Jesus to come and take care of it? Fuck that. Fuck that. There might be a God, there might be a Jesus, but guess what? He's going to have to understand we need justice in the here and now. I hate that mentality. I fucking hate it. It ain't going to just be all right in some other life. There might not be another life. What if this is the only life and you're wrong? Did you ever consider that? Fuck that. And Christians, the early Christians who came up with Christianity were a slave class. They were being fed to lions and set alight, burned alive and shit. Turn the other cheek. Fuck that. Anyway. So, there was a special breed of criminals. They called them the Vorvizakonye, or the thieves-in-law. A fraternal order of elite criminals that dates back to the time of czars. Kind of like a secret society. That when they didn't get justice, they gave justice. They first arose during the reign of Peter the Great, 1682 to 1725, incubated in the vast archipelago of Russia's prison camps. That's where the name Gulag Archipelago came from. There's that long transcontinental railroad that goes all the way through Russia, this huge, long-ass railroad. And all along the railroad, the camps, the concentration Gulag camps, are dotted all along the railroad, all the way across. So it's like an archipelago, and that's where it got the name. What's an archipelago? It's a chain of islands, right? So this is a chain of gulags, hence the name Gulag Archipelago. And if you gave me even if I was Jewish and you gave me the option of being in a concentration camp in Germany or the Gulag, I'll take Germany. I'll take the concentration camp in Germany, because it wasn't until the end of the war where people started having a lack of food and disease became rampant because Germany was bombed into submission. The fucking food wasn't even getting to the prison camp guards themselves. And they're going to feed themselves first before they feed these partisan communist prisoners. But up until then, the communist prisoners were fed well. They were work camps. These were not fucking execution camps. People were executed, but not one person was autopsied and found to be killed by gas. Not one. There was a guy by the name of Dr. Larson at the end of World War II who did about 1,000 autopsies in a bunch of different camps, and he testified. Well, there wasn't a court thing, but he put it in a paper in the 1980s. Google his name, Dr. Larson Autopsies, and you'll come up with a website called No Gassings. There was no gassings. There was not one body. This is right after the war. Right after the war, with all those bodies piled up that we saw, guess what he found? They died of dysentery. They died overwhelmingly of that disease. What was the disease? Can't remember the disease. But they died of disease, starvation, and dysentery, and all kinds of other things. So, I don't want to hear about death camps. I don't want to hear it. I don't want to hear it. It's bullshit. Were partisans taken out and shot in mass and mass fucking graves? Yes. Yes, that happened. I don't know the extent of it. But these were people who were plotting to overturn Germany. These were people who were actively making people go out and kill German officers. People don't know what brought on the night of broken glass. That night where all the Jewish shops were broken into and smashed. Some Jew, again, killed another German. And there was all this shit going on that instigated this. But nobody talks about what instigated this purge of the Jews from Germany. Hitler wanted to get rid of all the communists. The communists were overwhelmingly Jewish. He got rid of a lot of other communists that weren't Jewish. So I don't get it. People say it was just a Jewish purge. No, he decided that there 90-something% of the communists were Jews. So he said, why should I distinguish? I'm just going to get rid of all the Jews. If 90-something% of them are communists, and communists are trying to overtake my country, why am I going to sit here and pick and choose? No, I'm not taking a chance. I want all communists out of my country. But in the meantime, if you were involved in something directly and they had evidence on you, they shot your ass. No doubt about it. They fucking shot your ass. If you were not involved in something, you were Jewish, but you were at work age, you went to the camps to work. Because the war was going on. Where do you think they manufactured their weapons and all the shit they needed to conduct war? In the camps. They were work camps. Now, if you couldn't make it and you couldn't work, I don't know what they did with you. Maybe they shot you. Maybe they shot you if you were too old. I don't know. But these were work camps, and there were no gassings. It was horrific to work in there. Yes, it was terrible. Everything was fucked up. But the idea that these were death camps and that they were gassing people, to me, is ridiculous. You can check out David Cole, and you can check out Fred Leuchter's work, and you'll see a different fucking side of the story. At least I can say there's a different side to the story. What the extent of all this is, I don't know. But Dr. Larson did all these autopsies at the end of the war and did not find one body with signs of gassing. Typhus was the disease. They all died of typhus. So, there's another side to the story. People don't talk about it, and they should. So, back to these Russians who are executing people that didn't get their justice. The Jews know that justice is meted out in this world. You see what they did to Germany after the war? That's a whole other story. You see what they still do to Germany today? They're still getting their justice. They know that might makes right, and that if you want justice, you need to have it in this world, instead of waiting for the next world to maybe they'll get justice then. Maybe there's no other fucking world. Maybe you missed your only opportunity for justice. And that's this fucking world. This is the only life you're guaranteed to have. Any life that comes after this, you don't know if you're getting it. You can believe all you want. You can wish in one hand and shit in the other hand and see which hand gets filled up first. Alright. I didn't mean to rant this much. I wanted to make this quick. So I'm just gonna barrel through the rest of this. So they had these people called the Vizakonye, or the Thieves-in-Law, a fraternal order of elite criminals that dates back to the time of the Tsars. They first arose during the reign of Peter the Great, 1682 to 1725, incubated in the vast archipelago of Russia's prison camps. There, hardcore felons banded together in tight networks that soon spread through the gulags. Members were sworn to abide by a rigid code of behavior that included never working in a legitimate job, not paying taxes, refusing to fight in the army, and never, for any reason, cooperating with the police or state unless it was to trick them. A giant eagle with razor-sharp talons emblazoned on their chests, announced their status as Vors. Tattoos on their kneecaps meant they would not bow to anyone. I like that. They even developed a secret language that proved to be virtually indecipherable to authorities and set up a communal criminal fund, or Obshchak, to bribe officials, finance business adventures, and to help inmates and their families. Impressive. The Vor Brotherhood grew in strength to the point that they began to play an unusual role in the nation's history. I guess I'm starting to see why the common people looked up to them. In a country with that kind of oppression, I can understand now a little. Not in our country, though. A little different here. They taught Lenin's gangs to rob banks to fund the communist revolution. Banks are nothing but criminal operations anyway. I don't see why you shouldn't rob them. I'm not telling you to go out and rob a bank. I'm just saying. I don't fucking shed any tears. Don't rob banks. Uncle Shmuley told you. Alright. They taught Lenin's gangs to rob banks to fund the communist revolution. Later, enemies of the new state used them to sow dissension, fear, and chaos. During the Second World War, Stalin devised a plot to annihilate the thriving Vor subculture by recruiting them to defend the motherland. Those who fought with the Red Army, defying the age-old prohibition of helping the state, were rewarded by being arrested after the war and thrown into the same prison camps with the Vors who had refused to join the epic conflict. The collaborators were branded Suki, or bitches. At night, when the Arctic concentration camps grew miserably cold, knives were unsheathed and the two sides hacked each other to pieces. Barracks were bombed and set on fire. Wow. I remember Solzhenitsyn writing in Gulag Archipelago about the bitches. Now I know. See, things come together. The Vor Wars, or Bitches Wars, lasted from 1945 to 1953. When they were over, only the Vors who refused to battle the Nazis had survived. By then, they wielded ultimate authority in prison, even over wardens, importing liquor, narcotics, and women. They slept near open windows, away from the communal toilet, where, according to their beliefs, only homosexuals and weaklings were fit to reside. Vors became made men in Soviet prisons only after they were recommended by at least 2 other Vors. Even today, this nearly mythic criminal cult is one of the most dynamic forces in the Russian underworld. Wow. There's some bad motherfuckers. Elsin thrived among men like these. I loved Kishinev, Elsin fondly recalls. The big guys and the tough guys used to teach me steal from the childhood. They let me go with them on burglaries. I was so skinny and small they used to send me through the windows. I used to open the door for them. We used to compare ourselves to the wolves of the forest because the wolves only eat the weak animals. By the age of 9, look at that. What was I telling you about nature? Nothing is fair. The wolves only ate the weak animals. Who did these Vors prey on? The weak, the vulnerable. That's nature. You can feel bad all you want. You can say that's wrong and blah, blah, blah. This is the way the world works. And usually it's the guys who are saying, that's evil, that's mean, who fall victim to people like that. By the age of 9, Elson was a full-fledged member of a fierce street gang. We used to go from neighborhood to neighborhood to fight. Only reason we did was to show we were strong and weren't afraid. When I was 11, someone pulled a stiletto on me. I couldn't refuse to fight because if I refused, I would be a hated person. His opponent made a swift, jutting move, slicing his blade through Elson's chin and into his tongue. It was painful. I wanted to cry, but the gang leader who ordered me to fight was looking at me. I did not cry. Woo. Elson's parents had little patience for their son's criminal activities. Oh, my parents beat the shit out of me, he said. Elson's father, Abraham, was a master tailor who fled Poland on the heels of the Nazi invasion. The Russians suspected that he was a German spy and exiled him, this is his dad, to Siberia for the duration of the war. Elson's mother had been previously married, but her first husband died in the war and their 2 children perished of starvation. And we complain here in America. Some guy online triggered me. Like me the other night, I made a video. We are so spoiled. Wow. Well, this kind of shit puts things in perspective for you. Well, if you were in front of this guy who's been through all this shit and you complained about some little shit, what would he think? So, Elson's mother was previously married with a first husband, but he died in World War II, and their 2 children died of starvation. Wow. Well, they were in Poland, right? And Poland was invaded by the Nazis. Poland was taken over, and then Poland was taken back over at the end of the war when Russia came and pushed Germany all the way back to Germany. And so they got fucked up twice in Poland. You guys can't imagine. If you haven't seen The Greatest Story Never Told, it's a fucking must-see. As a matter of fact, I'm going to check the chat and get a link for you guys. Let's check the chat. Do you like the triggered impression? Yeah. Puts things in perspective, right? Oh, the suffering Germany fucking... Oh. Handsome Truth is in the house. How's my Russian? I think I still sound like Arnold Schwarzenegger. Alright, let me get you that link for Greatest Story Never Told, because it's a fucking must watch. It's the greatest story never told, and apparently the greatest documentary never watched. Because I don't know too many people that have seen it. Guys, it's a 6-hour documentary, 6.5 hours. So just watch it piecemeal. I know a lot of us, especially younger people, don't have fucking patience because we live in a distracted society where everybody's checking their phone over here, over there, where everybody's all... Nobody can concentrate on one thing. Plus, people don't have a lot of time. So watch it piecemeal. Watch an hour here, an hour there. But watch this, because this right here changed my opinion on World War II forever. It's one of those epiphany moments when you watch this. So let me give you a link-a-roni. Guys, don't forget to watch this. At least If you're not going to watch it right now, obviously, click on it, bookmark it, put it in your your watch later, something. Do not forget. You have to watch this. Yeah, I know, Paul. Yeah, it's wow. You want to talk about what people have been through? Holy fuck. You'll have a whole new perspective when you're done this. Alright, so let's battle through the rest of this like I promised but didn't do. Let's see. Okay, so he's telling his story. His parents were from Poland. They were married, but the first husband died in the war, and their 2 kids starved to death. Imagine that. I don't know how many of you are parents. I'm not, but I can't imagine the powerlessness of sitting there watching your children slowly die of starvation. I'd almost rather watch them get a bullet through the head. That's... wow. And so, his second father was thought to be a German spy. The Russians suspected he was a German spy and exiled him to Siberia for the whole duration of the war. So his mother had been previously married, starvation, blah, blah, blah. And he says, my father used to tell me, Monya, don't go with those bad guys because this will reflect on you. You will have bad reputation. But in school, I wasn't very good. I liked fight. I liked steal. Other guys would extort money from me, then I'd extort money from the younger kids. That's the way this world works. Big fish eat little fish. Little fish eat smaller fish. But even as a child, I thought... But even as a child, I thought, if I was born and raised in different area, would I be same or different? But later I understood that being criminal was my destiny. I don't know why. I don't believe in God. Inevitably, Elson began to have serious run-ins with Soviet law, a crucial step in becoming a full-fledged member of the underworld. If you didn't break law during a police beating, you were considered stand-up guy. If you didn't break during a police beating, you were considered a stand-up guy. If you cracked and became a snitch, you'd be labeled a musur, a Russian word that literally meant garbage. But that has taken on the pejorative meaning of either cop or rat, the worst epithet in the Russian criminal lexicon. The lexicon is language, or the words, like vernacular. Before the detectives interrogated you, you'd try to beat the confession out of you. They'd try. They put dirt in special socks and beat your kidneys. Afterward, you piss blood. Elson insists that he never squealed. Before long, Elson graduated to one of the highest callings in the Eastern Bloc's criminal pecking order, a pickpocket. By the way, talk about beatings, and in Alexander Solzhenitsyn's Gulag Archipelago, they talk about the torture methods in the gulags. Let me tell you, I would have talked. I would have said anything they wanted me to say. When you find out what they did to these people, you just... what kind of world we live in, you know? It just... you watch The Greatest Story Never Told, you read the Gulag Archipelago, and you're like, we're so naive in this country. We live like this fantasy life. We live like this... it's fake. What goes on in the real world? Oh my God. I gotta turn this air down real quick. But might makes right. He who has the power to destroy and force his will on others, he's the one that's going to win. If you don't like it, move to another planet where the rules are different. This is what I'm learning, and it just destroys your naivete. It destroys your whole idea of what right and wrong should be, fairness and all. It's gone. When you're naive, you're vulnerable. Matrix was right. Once you eat the red pill, there is no going back. None. Greatest fucking movie series. I love it. So they said pickpocket was like top of the line. Before long, Elson graduated to one of the highest callings in the Eastern Bloc's criminal pecking order, a pickpocket. Skilled pickpockets received immense respect from other criminals and were often accorded leadership status in their gangs. Polish Jewish thieves who came to Russia during World War II were considered the best pickpockets, Elson says. They could slip a wallet out of a jacket, snatch the rubles, and return it in a split second, the victim remaining unaware. That is some slick shit. I don't know how they do it. Bent on proving his mettle, Elson moved to Moscow and joined a gang that specialized in extortion. By the way, we hardly ever see that word mettle. Your mettle is your confidence, right? Your worthiness. A person's ability to cope well with difficulties or to face a demanding situation. You see, it's not metal like the metal. It's not metal like to dabble in, M-E-D-D-L-E. It's metal. So you see, metal has 3 different meanings and 3 different spellings. So it's your ability to cope well in a situation in a spirited and resilient way to test your mettle, right? And then you got, of course, metal. We know what metal is. And then you got metal, like the Pink Floyd album. Interfere in or busy oneself unduly with something that's not one's concern. You're meddling into something. Bent on proving his mettle, Elson moved to Moscow and joined a gang that specialized in extortion. I don't want to brag, but I was great at this, Elson recounted. I did it thousands of times. Like the victim balked. I could talk nice. I put a gun in his ear. Manya's motto. Don't show pity or regret when you kill someone. Don't even think about it. Because we need to get to the chopper. Although by the time he was 26, Elson was married, had 2 young daughters, and was flourishing in his gang life, political events conspired to create an even greater opportunity for him. These were the early years of détente. Détente was like the United States and Russia working together. And the American Jewish establishment and their congressional allies, who had long been trying to bring Soviet Jews westward, saw a way to leverage their cause. This is what I was talking about with the Food for Jews deal that the ADL helped broker. But most of them ended up going to the United States and not to Israel like the ADL wanted. In September 1972, in a speech before the National Conference on Soviet Jewry, Washington State Democratic Senator Henry Scoop Jackson proposed linking U.S. trade benefits to emigration rights, that means leaving your nation, in the Soviet Union. He later co-sponsored the Jackson-Vanik Amendment, which withheld most favored nation status from socialist countries that restricted Jewish emigration. So there was a thing intact with both countries that if you were, this was during the Cold War, where Russia and the United States supposedly hate each other. It was all bullshit to me. There was this amendment took away this banning of people emigrating from socialist countries to the United States, or vice versa. So they passed an amendment which got around that at the behest of the ADL. The ADL was involved in that. The effort, and Israel. The effort, which was bitterly opposed by Nixon and Kissinger as a threat to détente, was one of the factors that pressured Russia to allow tens of thousands of Jews to leave the country. In a 2-year period between 1972 and 73 alone, more than 66,000 Russian Jews left, compared to just 2,808 in 1969. 66,000. Now here's a good example of how Jews are different. Nixon and Kissinger is a Jew, he was against it. But the ADL and those Jews and those aligned with the ADL and Israel wanted it. So we can't say the Jews did this and the Jews did that, because it's more confusing than that. But with what must have been considerable amusement, the Soviets... Oh, it's fucking up here. The Soviets made certain that this vast exodus was not made up solely of innocent, persecuted Jews, much as Fidel Castro would do. Turning the page. Much as Fidel Castro would do years later during the Mariel boat lift, the KGB took this opportunity to empty its jails of thousands of hardcore criminals, dumping vast numbers of undesirables like Monia Elson on an unsuspecting America, as well as Israel and other Western nations. Persecution certainly played no role in Elson's application for Jewish refugee status. He was typical of his era, a deracinated Soviet Jew. Deracinated means you've had your race taken from you, or you don't care about your race, with a touch of self-loathing. I guess you could call all those white lefties who say white people suck even though they're white, that's an example of deracination. They don't care that they're white, meanwhile they're advocating white genocide and attacks on white. I fucking hate those traitorous fucks. I hate them. I hate them. I fucking hate them. I hate them. Oh, I fucking hate them. You're white and you're gonna fucking tell everybody how bad white people are. Oh, bad, white people are so racist. Meanwhile, they're fucking more racist than anybody else. Don't get me started on that. It's fucking traitorous scum. Dumping vast numbers of undesirables like Monia Elson on an unsuspecting America, blah, blah, blah. Okay, he was typical of his era. A deracinated Soviet Jew with a touch of self-loathing. Okay, so interesting. Just like these lefty communist white people say they're against white people, they're self-loathing. Self-loathing. They feel guilty for the past, which they had nothing to do with. It's one thing to have sympathy and empathy for what's happened in the past. It's another thing to take the blame for it. These fucking retards. They feed right into the communists' narrative, and they don't understand anything about history. Meanwhile, the Jews owned 75% of Jewish families owned slaves. So yes, that is all Jews. Out of all the Jews, the 1830 census showed that 75% of Jews, whether they were Ashkenazi, whether they were Sephardic, whether they were this, that, or the other, 75% of Jews owned slaves. About 30% of white people owned slaves. Not just that, but the white people who are still in this country today, the vast majority, about 95% of the white people in this country today, they don't even have lineage that went back to the times of slavery. Most of the people like me, my people came in the early 1900s, but some people can go back to the late 1880s, somewhere around there when Italians and Irish and all those came. That's where the white people of today are from. There was no slavery. So for white people to fucking feel guilty for slavery today is retarded. They're just retarded. It's okay to be sympathetic and empathetic, to feel bad, but not as a participant. There's only about Only about 5% of white people have lineage that go back to antebellum. That means before the war, before the Civil War. Antebellum America. About 5%. And as we know, only 30% of white people owned slaves back in 1830. So, of those 5% that have lineages that go back to antebellum America, only 30% of that 5% had anything to do with slaves whatsoever. So, these people, these fucking retarded commie lefties, they need to fucking get a clue. This is why I like studying and researching. Because I can fucking combat the lies of today with the fucking truths of yesterday. I like that. I'm gonna coin that. Combat the lies of today with the truths from yesterday. I like that. It's concise, short, rhymes. Might as well check the chat since I'm making this a fucking long ass shit here. Oh, this is going to get put on limited state. No doubt about it. You guys will never see this chat again. Fucking cocksuckers. Hey, ADL. Suck my white dick, you faggots. Bad guy says, but I saw a Steven Spielberg movie that says I'm evil. Good one, guy. World Goyim Unite says, link to the 75%. Bring up the 1830 census. Besides, even if it was 50% of white people owning slaves, even if it was 100%, if every white person owned a slave back then, you got to understand, a slave was like the most expensive thing you could buy back then. So it makes sense that only a certain amount of people could own them. And these were people that owned plantations and shit. And the Jews were more into, they're at the top of every business. They always are. That's why 75% of Jews could afford to own them. Common white people couldn't afford this shit. What was I going to say? Let's see what else we got. What was the term you never heard? Deracinated? I think probably. Deracified. But yeah, even if 100% of white people owned slaves before the war, Civil War, only about 5% of people here today have lineage that goes back. So that would still mean 95% of white people never had any family members that ever owned slaves. 95% of white people today had nothing to do with fucking slavery. Nothing. 95%. Even if 100% of people owned slaves back then. So to quibble about the 75% and the 40% and the 30%, the point is, we got nothing to do with it. These people today, we got nothing to do with it. Now, maybe you could talk about Jim Crow laws in the South and shit. All right. Little different. De-whited. But of that 5% that goes back, only 30% of those people own slaves either. So, if you got, let's say there's 200 million white people. 10 million of them have lineage that goes back to the Civil War. And only 30% of that 10 million, which would be 3 million. So if there are 200 million white people in this country, only 3 million of them have lineage that goes back to slavery. But there are fewer. I think there's probably about 170 million, I'll guess. I don't know. Thank you, World Goyim Unite. The guilt trip it's in deep. We've been taught that we're guilty for slavery. No, white people ended slavery. No other people in the world ever did it. Not the Arabs, not the Indians, not the Chinese, not the Native Americans, not anybody, not the fucking Eskimos. White people ended slavery. You think we ever get the credit? No, we get the fucking blame. And it's thanks to these people who had more to do with slavery than we did. They ran all the big ships out of Newport, Rhode Island. I know, I've been doing my little studying. Stay with me. I'm going to be reading some cool shit. All right. I got to get back to this because I got to get finished. By the way, I'll show my shirt for you guys that didn't see it yet. This guy ran for office called D's Nuts. Not D's Nuts. My buddy made this shirt. He drew that shit. I don't know if you can see it. How about right there? Pretty cool, right? And now I find out they're pretty much both playing for the same team anyway. Yeah, I guess Trump's done some good things, but we know who's running him. We know. Just like the black people got duped by Obama, the white people got duped by Trump-a-roni. That's the way I feel. I hope he does well. I'll keep hoping, but you can hope in one hand and shit in the other, and watch which one gets filled first. So, persecution certainly played no role in Elson's application for Jewish refugee status. He was typical of his era, a deracinated Soviet Jew with a touch of self-loathing. They called me a fucking kike everywhere, said Elson. And if someone called me a Zid, I fought back. So they could call him a kike, didn't bother him. They call him a Zid, he fought back. I don't know what a Zid was. But anyway. But otherwise, I was thinking, what kind of Jew am I? I don't know the Jewish holidays. I never heard of them, but I sang Russian song. I ate Russian food. I spoke Russian language. I sucked inside Russian culture. The only thing he liked about being Jewish per se, he admits, was that some of the Soviet Union's top crooks were also Jews. However, if stealing from the workers in the workers' paradise was pure pleasure, Elson reasoned, then stealing from the workers in the vastly richer capitalist paradise would be nirvana. Fortunately, his Soviet passport was stamped Jew, and in 1977 he obtained a precious exit permit and moved his camp to a transition camp outside Vienna run by the Jewish Agency. Elson was given an Israeli visa. It was the only way the Soviets would let a Jew leave the USSR. But like many Jewish refugees, he wanted to go to the United States instead, and well-funded American Jewish organizations who supported the concept of free immigration helped large numbers of them gain entry to America, infuriating Israel's Zionist establishment, with the ADL, which believed that Israel should be the destination for all the Jewish people. So there you go. You got ADL and the Zionists trying to get these Russian people. They're the ones that created the deal, and the whole point was to get them into Israel. Some did, but most of them went to Western Europe and the United States overwhelmingly. And you had well-funded American Jewish organizations trying to get them away from being Zionists. So you got some Jews trying to, with their American bent, and then you got some Jews with the Zionist plan. Just makes you scratch your head a little, like, oh, maybe I don't know everything about Jews. Soon he was moved from Vienna to a transit camp near Rome, operated by the Hebrew Immigration Aid Society for emigres headed to Western nations. It was in these camps where criminals from the far reaches of the Soviet Empire converged, languishing for up to months at a time, that the global menace of Russian organized crime was fomented. They proved to be both excellent recruiting stations and networking centers where gangsters on their way to Brighton Beach met gangsters bound for Antwerp, Brussels, or London. Once the mobsters reached their destinations, they could phone up their new friends for criminal advice, intelligence, and additional contacts. Scattered around the world, Russian criminals passed on what they had learned about the local law enforcement system, the monetary system, how the banks worked, said a frustrated DEA agent in New York. And they just started beating the hell out of us, this DEA guy says. The Italians will come to New York and that's it. The most they can do is phone somebody back in Italy, but they don't know anybody in London or Belgium. So these guys were sophisticated. It's the red octopus, said Louis Cardinelli, a DEA supervisor in Manhattan. We helped foster this global organized crime monster with tentacles reaching from one country to the next. Elson waited in the Rome transit camp for 3 months. During his idle hours, he pickpocketed unwary Italians, using the plunder to buy designer blue jeans. I mentioned blue jeans earlier, for his wife and daughters. Meanwhile, hoodlum comrades from Moscow who had already visited the United States paid calls on Elson to regale him with the criminal splendors of Brighton Beach. Regale. I thought that meant to put stuff on. Let's see. Or regale. Maybe it's pronounced regale. I'm not sure. Entertain or amuse with talk. So they were talking to him on the phone. They're like, yeah, dude, gotta come to Brighton, brah. It's fucking rad. Fucking blue jeans. And he was like, yes, I will come. When I was asked to come to America, when I asked Elson, this is the author talking, why he came to America, one of his defense lawyers in Brooklyn bluntly acknowledged, he said, to shake people down. When he arrived in New York in 1978 on a flight paid for by the U.S. government, Elson was like a 9-year-old kid who had won a lifetime pass to Disneyland. I was free, he said. I could rob, I could steal, I could do whatever I wanted. In the 1970s, more than 40,000 Russian Jews settled in Brighton Beach, the formerly stolid working-class Jewish neighborhood that inspired Neil Simon's gentle play, Brighton Beach Memoirs. It was under the shadow of the elevated subway tracks on Brighton Beach Avenue, bustling with Russian meat markets, vegetable pushcarts, and bakeries, that the Russian gangsters resumed their careers as professional killers, thieves, and scoundrels. Can you imagine 40,000 Russians just showing up in a 10-year period in one town, Brighton Beach? 40,000 of them. Wow. Holy fuck. Who knew that? So these gangsters resumed their former lives as gangsters. Can you imagine? No, I thought they were just going to go legit. By the time of Elson's arrival, Brighton Beach had already become the seat of the dreaded Organizacja. I'll show you. You want to see? There it is. It's the one in italics. Organizacja. Okay. The Russian Jewish mob. That's what they called it. The Organizacja. Elson quickly developed that Brighton Beach was two communities. He quickly discovered that Brighton Beach was two communities. Affluent Russians, that means rich Russians, resided in the well-kept Art Deco apartment buildings that lined the Atlantic Ocean, while on the many side, oh, Jesus Christ, while on the many side streets littered with crack dens and decaying clapboard homes, poor Russian families lived sometimes 10 to a squalid room. Squalid is disgusting conditions. The neighborhood had decayed so badly that even the local McDonald's had to be shut down. Bordered on one side by the ocean and on another by an enormous middle-class housing project referred to by the emigres as the Great Wall of China, the Russians built a closed world, inhospitable to outsiders, that was self-consciously modeled on the city many once called home, Odessa, a tawdry Black Sea port that was once considered the Marseille of the Soviet Union. Can you imagine? It was so bad they had to shut down the fucking McDonald's. McDonald's serves pink slime for food, and they had to shut that down. Ay, ay, ay. So it became a little Odessa. With that many people coming into one town, they all went to the same areas. One was an affluent area and the other one was the poor area. They went to one or the other, and they just took over. There was like a no-go zone back in the 70s. Beefy men in fur caps walked down the boardwalk on frigid winter mornings, ice caught in their beards and hair, stopping at vendors to buy pierogis, pastry shells filled with spicy pork topped with a dollop of sour cream. Movie houses showed first-run Russian-language films. Cafes crackled with the voices of gruff conversations in Russian and Ukrainian. The streets also crackled with gunfire. Little Odessa was the new Klondike, a town full of dangerous desperados where the powerful crooks preyed upon the small. During this anarchic epoch of Russian organized crime in America, a big man gathered around him other strong men to form a gang. These groups were amoeba-like. They had no real shape, no definite structure. There was little loyalty, and entrepreneurial wise guys constantly shifted allegiances in search of a score, vying with one another over Medicare and Medicaid scams, counterfeiting schemes and drug deals. A professional hit cost as little as $2,000, and it was often cheaper to hire a hitman than it was to pay off a loan. Immigration good. The gangsters devoted most of their energy to preying on the community they helped to create. Nearly every Russian in Brighton Beach had a family member who was either connected to the mob or paying off an extortionist. Gang leaders would headquarter their operations in one of the multitude of Russian restaurants and cabarets. The most notorious one, on Brighton Beach Avenue in the heart of Brooklyn's emigre community, was named, appropriately enough, the Odessa. It was owned by Marat Balogula, a bookish-looking hood who bought it in 1980 and quickly turned it into Mob Central. He replaced the flacking paint. Oh, I'm so retarded. Sorry. He replaced the flaking paint and frayed industrial carpeting with chrome and parquet, and hired a stunning African-American singer fluent in Russian. Downstairs, he opened a seafood cafeteria. The Odessa attracted huge crowds of locals who gorged themselves on inexpensive family-style meals that included gluttonous portions of chopped liver, caviar, slabs of sable, beef stroganoff, of course, and skewers of lamb, all washed down with a bottle of Smirnoff vodka that was placed on each table. As a four-piece band that looked more Vegas than Moscow played Sinatra standards and Russian pop cabarets, and Russian pop tunes, Buxom bottle blondes in black leather miniskirts danced with barrel-chested men among the cabaret's Art Deco columns. A corner of the room was sometimes reserved for members of Hadassah, a woman's Zionist group, who came to express solidarity with the Russians. The club had odd brushes with celebrity. After an arc portrait of the Odessa appeared in the New Yorker's Talk of the Town, it briefly became a popular night spot for 30-something yuppies who wanted to savor beans in a Caucasian walnut sauce and the titillating aura of organized crime. When they say Caucasian, they mean the Caucasus. And the titillation of organized crime. And pop singer Taylor Dane got her first break at the Odessa when she answered an ad in The Village Voice seeking musicians. Dane, then a plump 15-year-old high school girl from Long Island, was friendly with Balagula, and her picture still hangs on the nightclub's wall. Wow. I remember Taylor Dane, when I was 17, came over here somewhere, and we snuck in. You had to be 21, but me and my friends snuck in looking for some ass, but we were way too underdressed. We got served, though, back in the day. So Taylor Dane, then a plump 15-year-old girl, was friendly with the guy, Balagula, the owner, and her picture's still on the nightclub wall. When director Paul Mazursky wanted to film the cabaret scene in Moscow on the Hudson with Robin Williams in the Odessa, but Balagula declined, afraid of drawing too much attention to the club. The scene was shot at the National Restaurant, a rival Brighton Beach mob hangout, then owned by Alexander Cabbagehead Skolnick, a Danny DeVito look-alike with a violent streak. Late at night, after the last diner left the Odessa, the American version of the People's Court often convened upstairs in the disco, but unlike back in the Soviet Union, in Brighton Beach, the tradition of influential criminals adjudicating local disputes became corrupt, explained a prominent Russian emigre. There's never a time when the judges don't take a piece of the action. The judges were often Balagula and two of his thugs, who meted out sentences while seated around a table in the cabaret. The lights were dimmed, and no food or water was provided. It is very, very dark, like a Godfather movie, said an emigre who was summoned to several proceedings. The first thing I said was, "Why don't you turn on the lights?" Silence. Total silence. It was just such a setting that greeted the small-time jewel thief Vyacheslav Lubarsky, who was ordered to appear in court to settle a $40,000 gambling dispute. The judges quickly ruled against him, and when Lubarsky balked, he was suspended naked from a light fixture. Not suspended like get out of here. Suspended, hung upside down. It didn't say upside down. He was suspended naked from a light fixture. Then one of the judges, Emil Puzuretsky, whacked out on coke and vodka, threatened to disembowel him. Puzuretsky, who had spent 12 years in the Soviet Gulag for murder and was decorated with Technicolor tattoos of a skeleton, bats, a snow leopard, and an angel, had become one of Little Odessa's most feared enforcers. He uses his knife on every occasion, notes his FBI file. As a newcomer to Brighton Beach, Elson found himself in a strange and unfamiliar land, and he had to learn a different set of survival skills. "One thing disappointed me about America is people don't carry money," he said with a frown. "Everything is credit card." He adapted in the manner he knew best. "I started working credit card scam, even though I don't know how to speak English." This guy's a piece of work. Elson soon teamed up with 48-year-old Yuri Brokhin, an intellectual of modest accomplishments, who had immigrated to the United States with his wife in 1972. Since then, he had managed to foster a reputation for himself as a prominent Russian Jewish dissident. He wrote 2 books, as well as articles for Dissident, Jewish Digest, and the New York Times Magazine, most of which were fierce anti-communist polemics. A polemic is like the literary version of a rant against somebody. A polemic is when you go off on somebody. I heard about Brokhin in Moscow, Elson said. He was well known. His nickname was Student. I used to call him Brain. Together, the pair embarked on a lucrative crime spree, stealing hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of jewelry, often using a simple, no-risk scam. Corruption in Manhattan's Diamond District on 47th Street was so rampant at the time that the authorities had all but given up policing it. All Brokhin and Elson had to do was to identify crooked store owners, visit their shops, and demand the goods. We tried to rob thieves, Elson says. We tried to rob thieves, Elson says. They knew that their victims were so deep into their own crimes that they'd never call the police, but would simply pass the losses on to their insurance companies. Soon, store owners throughout the Diamond District were seeking out the Russian robbers to stage fake burglaries so that they, too, could scam their insurers. I'll share with you. I'm going to check the chat one last time. I only got two or three paragraphs left. I'll share with you one of my capers back when I was like 16. We were standing out in front of a store, and I see these 2 guys. Me and my boy, we're just hanging out. You know how when you were kids, you just hang out anywhere just to hang out. 2 guys go into the store, and they got bags, and they're putting stuff in their bag. The both of them. They go up to the counter, and I'm watching through the window, and no money is exchanged. And they just left, and they shook hands. They're laughing and stuff. It looked like they were real friendly with the store clerk. So I was like, yo, holy shit. I was like, I'll be right back. My buddy stayed outside. I went in the store. I was like, yo, let me get a bag. Guy gave me a bag. I swear to God, I started going through the store, filling the bag up. He's like, you intend to pay for that, right? I was like, no, I saw what you did with your boys. I'm going to do the same thing. My friend at this time came back in. I was like, give him a bag too. They gave him a bag. We got a bag, 2 bags, and we're just filling it with candy and fucking everything we wanted. Just filled it. And then we were like, deuces. We set him up because we saw that he robbed the joint, and he knew we'd probably turn him in if he didn't let us do it. So it sounds kind of familiar. Criminal minds think alike, I guess. The duo employed a different gambit to rob honest jewelers. They'd dress up as ultra-Orthodox Jews, complete with paste-on beards, side curls, long black coats, and black hats. Entering a jewelry store run by an Orthodox Jew, they would ask to see a variety of expensive diamond stones from the display case. Brokhin would babble away in Yiddish, distracting the salesman, while Elson switched the diamonds with zirconium. They'd continue to haggle, and after failing to make a deal, would slip away with the jewels tucked snugly inside the pockets of their coats. The con is called the fast finger. We made a lot of money with that, Elson boasts. Once, after pulling the scam on a trip to Chicago, the 2 men were arrested in their Orthodox Jewish attire as they boarded a plane at Midway Airport. It happened to be Yom Kippur, the holiest day of the Jewish calendar, when observant Jews are strictly forbidden to travel. Here they are dressed as oh my God, Hasidic Orthodox Jews. Oh, that's great. What a fucking story. An airport security guard who was Jewish became suspicious, thinking the men looked more like Cuban terrorists than rabbis. Pictures of them in Hasidic garb appeared the next day in Chicago newspapers. Brokeen's wife rushed to Chicago with $175,000 in cash for bail. Somehow, they both got off without a jail sentence. Their records were also expunged. It's a lot of money to get off the hook and beat a felony rap, said Elson enigmatically, mysteriously. In other words, he ain't telling how. Although they were pulling in good money, it was still a small-time operation, and Elson was burning with ambition. He increasingly turned to vicious acts of drug-influenced extortion to make a name for himself. Failing to move up the criminal food chain, he decided to join the most powerful gang in Brighton Beach, headed by the rapacious FC Agran. Rapacious means rape. It's got the word rape in it. When you steal and rape everything, you're rapacious. Let's take a peek. What distinguishes rapacious from just theft? Rapacious. Aggressively greedy or grasping. Okay. Nothing to do with theft. It's rapaciousness is associated with thieves. Let's see, where am I? Huh? Where's that word rapacious? Alright, I'll start here. Although they were pulling in good money, it was still a small-time operation, and Elson was burning with ambition. He increasingly turned to vicious acts of drug-influenced extortion to make a name for himself. Failing to move up the criminal food chain, he decided to join the most powerful gang in Brighton Beach, headed by the rapacious FC Agran. Elson, however, was disappointed in his new boss's management style. Agran wanted to be the sun, but he didn't want the sun's rays to fall on somebody else. Elson grumbled, I wanted to kill him, but you see, it's not easy. The tempestuous gangster, a tempest is a storm, so someone who rages is tempestuous. The tempestuous gangster from Kishinev realized that his future, if he had one at all, showed little promise in the Darwinian world of Brighton Beach. Frustrated, Elson trekked to the jungles of South America in 1984 to set up a cocaine smuggling operation. I went to Peru, I went to Bolivia, I passed through a lot of South America, Elson recounted. Although he didn't yet speak Spanish, he ventured deep into the tropical rainforest to purchase cocaine. I wasn't interested in 1 key, 2 keys, 3 keys. I was making huge deals, crowed Elson, who operated out of Europe and Israel. Still, the criminal big time eluded him, and he was incarcerated in Israel for trafficking in cocaine. Years later, however, Elson would return to Brighton Beach with a vengeance, creating one of the most powerful Russian mob families in the world, while initiating a gangland war that left a trail of bodies from the street corners of New York to the back alleys of Moscow. And that is it. Niet, this is it. There is no more. Next chapter. Little Don. Niet, nada, nothing. Get to the chopper. Alright, that's about it, boys and gooies. Alright, I'll check the chat one more time. Awesome show, thank you. Right now he's in re-education. Boom, 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 boom. These guys are fucking... That's a funny chapter. Damn! Had to time somebody out. What happened? Let me see the message. I can see it. Israel's the startup nation and the 8th most powerful country in the world. What's wrong with that? Let's see, what else did he say? So many uneducated imbeciles. Such a waste of life living dumb in the darkness. Try education. But he spelled education wrong. Look, I'm gonna reinstate this just so you can see it. I can't. He's telling us, this guy, Yanni Korhonen. Sad to see so many uneducated imbeciles. It's such a waste of life living dumb in the darkness. Try education. Yeah, it's probably a typo because the U is next to the I. But I don't give a fuck. You're going to make fun of people. Spell the shit right, faggot. But for the record, I don't care. He can troll all he wants. That doesn't bother me. I would just ignore him. Let him troll all he wants. If you got a bunch of people in there, you know, bad boy, then I would say axe him. But the best thing to do is when you ignore him, it pisses him off the most. So, like, if nobody addresses it, the guy's going to come in there and say, oh, you're dumb, you're this, you're that. Wow. Oh, I'm dumb, am I? Okay, yeah, okay. Oh, we're dummies, right? We're idiots, we're imbeciles, blah, blah, blah. Okay, just ignore him. That's the best thing to do. It's like when you got a girlfriend who's ragging and she's just pushing buttons, and you're usually the type of guy that flips out, snaps out, fucking breaks shit and whatever, and you can have the patience to just whatever and ignore her. After about a half an hour, that bitch is going to go insane. It is the worst torture in the world for somebody to be ignored, because she's pushing buttons because she wants a reaction. He's pushing buttons because he wants the reaction. Just don't give it to him. That's even more torture than a timeout. Don't feed the trolls. No, you're good. You're doing what you thought you should do. That's all. We're just starting out, so we'll iron all this shit out eventually, and then you'll know. You did the right thing, bad guy. This is why you have the wrench. You're good. Killing them with kindness, yeah. Ignoring doesn't work with the Jew. It does. It does. Besides, we don't know if he's a Jew. Maybe he is, maybe he isn't. I noticed a lot of these Christian Zionists get more pissed off than the Jews themselves. So, let's see, what else is he saying here? View the message. Nobel price is the highest price you can get. Oh, he's not American. He says Nobel price instead of the Nobel Prize is the highest price you can get in this world. In Did's world. I know what he's saying, because a lot of Jews have gotten Nobel Prizes. Is that his argument? He's right. Congratulations. Jews have disproportionately gotten Nobel Prizes. But I would look into Alfred Nobel, all right, because there's more to that story. Alfred Nobel, who the prize is named after, is a guy who created dynamite. So more people have died from Nobel with his Peace Prize than you can fucking imagine. And not just that, the Nobel Peace Prize is a group of people. It's like nepotism. It's like a group of friends, and they give it to each other's friends. It's not necessarily the most brilliant person. So when you get a Nobel Prize in physics or in mathematics or da-da-da, it's a clique of people. So chances are a lot of those Jews got it because they knew somebody. But most of them were brilliant. And I love Einstein. I'll never say a bad thing about Einstein. My favorite physicist is, what's his name? He's a Jew. Why can't I think right now? The guy who helped on the atom bomb. Not Oppenheimer. The guy used to play the bongos and shit. Why can't I think right now? But anyway, he's a Jew. Love him. Love him to death. He used his mind for science. I love that. There's nothing wrong with that. He didn't own a bank. You know, he's not out here chiseling motherfuckers trying to take away our free speech. Those are the people I'm concerned about. You know what I mean? Yeah, what's that tell you? Obama got the Peace Prize. So Einstein was hopeless, too ill. The guy was Tesla. Oh, Tesla was the shit. Yeah, Einstein wasn't exactly hopeless, but there are some concerns about where he got his info. I'll say that. I would say, guys, rid your heart of jealousy. Give people their due, even your enemies. Give enemies their due when it's due. Then nobody can call you a hater. You know what I mean? If a guy is better than you in something, so what? Admit it, right? It's you just look bad when you're denigrating people just because they're Jewish and you're not, and you're like you just sound like salty. You sound like it just sounds bad. You know what I mean? So give people their due. Say, yeah, Einstein, he was smart, and he was. Even if he stole some of his shit, he's smart. So, and the idea of relativity is fucking awesome. We had a certain someone was in No More News' chat the other day, and No More News' chat was so full of the craziest people, of some of the dumbest people I've ever seen. It was scary. It was scary reading that chat. And there was one guy in there who follows me a lot. And I won't say the name, but he was saying that the earth is flat. And he was saying that the earth is flat because, what's this tell you? He says, the earth goes 66,600 miles an hour around the sun, which you can't really calculate, and I can explain why. He says the earth is tilt 66.6 degrees, which it's not. It's 23 degrees. And that's a relative to the solar plane. I mean, he's saying that the curvature, he's saying that the earth is flat, but then he says the curvature is 66 something. Some fucking crazy shit. Yeah, you got him. You got him. But one cool thing about relativity tells you that you can never know how fast the earth is going around the sun. Right? Alright, check me out real quick. Give me your attention for just a second. Say you're in a school bus. You're sitting at the back of the school bus, and I'm sitting in the front of the school bus. And there's a guy with a radar gun. You throw the ball to me to the front of the bus. The bus is moving at 50 miles an hour, and you throw the ball's clocked at 20 miles an hour inside the bus. That's 20 miles an hour relative to the bus. But say there's a guy sitting on the sidewalk watching the bus go by. Now that ball is going 50 plus 20. So to the guy on the sidewalk, that ball is now going 70 miles an hour, not 20. But inside the closed bus, which is moving inside, it's like a enclosed environment, it only goes 20. But to the guy on the sidewalk, it goes 70 miles an hour. But it's worse than that. Because let's say the bus is going east and the earth rotates eastward at 1,000 miles an hour. So if you're standing on the moon watching the earth turn, that ball goes 20 miles an hour plus 50 for the bus plus 1,000 for the spin of the earth. So now it's doing 1,060 or 1,070. But it's worse than that. Let's say you're sitting around near the sun and you watch the earth going around the sun at more speed. Now it's going to be the 20 miles an hour inside the bus. It's going to be the 50 mile an hour for the bus. It'll be 1,000 for the spin. And let's say the spin is in the direction, just for sake of argument. It'll be plus however fast the earth is going around the sun. But it's worse than that, because the sun isn't sitting still. It's hurtling around the center of our galaxy, this black hole at the center of our galaxy, at who knows what speed. So now the ball is going 20 for the throw. It's going 50 for the bus, 1,000 for the earth spin. It's going whatever how fast the earth goes around the sun, plus the speed of the sun going around the galaxy. But it's worse than that, because even our whole galaxy is hurtling through space, and it's rotating around other galaxies in this cluster of galaxies called the local supergroup, the local group, and then there's a supergroup. So you have to add that speed in. And now maybe the supergroup is going around larger structures, and you can never, ever know how fast anything is going. You can only tell how fast it's going relative to something else. And that's the idea of relativity. So, when he says the Earth is going around the sun at 66,600 miles an hour, relative to what? Bro. Come at me, bro. Come at me, bro. Flat Earth, bro. Yo, FE in the house. So, I don't know. I think we should. I watched that chat. All right, this is serious for a minute. And everybody, there's a couple people saying, yeah, that's why the GDL is not going anywhere. Because it's full of a bunch of fucking idiots, flat earthers, and a bunch of fucking morons that da-da-da-da-da-da-da. And they're saying bad shit about us because we got people out there talking about flat earth. Really? You're making us look bad, bro. Yeah, I don't buy into all that 666 shit. Because if you ever look up 666, you don't know what it means. There's some translations that say it's 616. There's a lot of people that say it's Nero. Nero was setting fire to Christians and feeding them to lions back in the day, and the Christians developed a secret code talking about the beast. The beast was Nero. It has nothing to do with devils and all that shit. We need to get away from all our fucking this fancy thinking about 666 and 33 and all that. Don't worry about it. Just figure out the facts of what they're doing in this world to us. That's it. That's all you got to worry about. The banking, the money, the gangsterism, the fucking taking away our free speech. The less time you spend on 33 and the fucking numerology and all this bullshit, the better. You know what I'm saying? It's a waste of time. It makes us look bad. And I want us to look educated. I want us to look fucking scholarly and intellectual. That's where I'd rather go. So, bad guy, it does get a little strange, yeah. And why even get into those details? You're not going to figure anything out. You're not going to be able to predict things. Like, the gematria. The guys go in and they put words in, and then numbers come up, and they say, so this means this, and this means that. Can you predict anything with it? The value of a theory is in its predictability. So, relativity, you can use relativity to make predictions about the universe. You can calculate where something's going to be in a month. That's how they get spaceships out to other planets within fucking pinpoint accuracy. It's got predictability. We can't predict anything with all this numerology and gematria. But after the fact, like the one girl was talking about, if you look from Israel and you look on the horizon, there are these stars called the twins, and then they look like they're falling, and they're going down below the horizon, so that means the Twin Towers falling. Well, where were you before 9/11? Why didn't you tell us that before 9/11? Because it has no predictive ability. It's only after the fact, in hindsight, they say, 9/11. Let me see something in the universe that fits that narrative. It's like Bible predictions and prophecies. Prophecies. No, they're self-fulfilling. The thing is written already. It says, we're going to have a guy from the Davidic line who's going to be the Messiah, blah, blah, blah. And people do what's necessary to make that happen. It's not a prediction. A real prophecy would be one somebody writes down and doesn't show anybody. And then it happens, and then they pull it out and say, see, I predicted this. That's a prophecy. It's all bullshit. And it's not worth our time. I never fell off the earth. It is stupid. Yeah, flat earth. Flat earth, man. Shit. Come on now. So, I shouldn't even waste my time trying to debunk flat earth theory. That makes me just as bad. But one of the first clues that old ancient man got was when a ship leaves port, as it goes in the distance, it starts to disappear. But the bottom of the boat disappears first. And the last thing you can see is the top of the mast, because it's going down with the curvature of the earth. So, when a ship comes back into port, the first thing you see is the top of the mast. And then you get to see the sail. And then finally, once it's close enough, you can see the boat. What does that tell us? Right? Alright, guys. I had fun. Keep it classy. Keep it simple. Don't go with the numerology. Make people embarrassed to talk about that shit. You know? Because it just reflects poorly on us. Alright, deuces, my gooses. I'm outie. Catch you next time. Next chapter is The Little Don. The Little Don. Alright, guys. I'll talk to you later. Good night.